Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this video, I'll show you how to make a mini album using a single sheet of folded cardstock. To begin, we'll need a full sheet of cardstock that is a light to medium weight. Now the book that I'm making is sized for artist trading cards, so I'm going to cut 1 inch off this side for a base that's 7.5 by 11 inches, but I'll explain later how you can make this project in different sizes. I'll score down the center of that piece of cardstock at 3 3/4 inches. Next, I'm going to turn the cardstock a quarter turn, and I'll score it again in fourths at 2 3/4 inches, 5.5 inches, and 8 1/4 inches. If you're wanting to make your book a different size, you can make it smaller or larger, however you want. You can begin with any size cardstock. Just score it down the center lengthwise. And then to determine the other score lines, you'll divide the length by 4. Next, I'm going to cut a slit from my first to my third score line right along that center score line to create an opening in the middle of this sheet. I'm ready now to fold the book, so I want to really make sure that my score lines are creased well. And the best way that I found to do this is to fold the card lengthwise first and crease the score line down, and then open the card up flat and fold it in half the other way to create a mountain fold. And then the other 2 score lines you'll fold the opposite way to create valley folds. Make sure that as you're creasing the score lines, you're lining up the edges really tightly so that your book will fold very straight and even. So here's the fold that we've created, and you'll see when we fold it back on the center line how that center cut creates the inner pages of the book. We're just going to squeeze those 2 sections together and fold them over to the side, and then we'll wrap the left panel around to make a cover. You can wrap it to the back or to the front, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put adhesive on the inside of the panel so that when I fold it back up into a book, the pages will stay together. I like adding stripes of adhesive horizontally on one side, so that's along the edge and then along the score line. And then on the other side to go the other way and put adhesive at the edges and then on both sides of each score line. Then when I fold it back up, it gives me a good coverage on every side of each panel. When you fold the book together, you'll put the side panels together first. So do those one at a time and press around each edge. Try to hold that center panel apart until you're ready to put it together so that you make sure you line up the edges well. Crease around each edge to make sure that you have all the adhesive stuck down together. And then you'll fold it as we did before, putting 3 panels over to the side and folding the left panel around to create a cover. And there is the structure of our little mini book. Now I mentioned that I made my book to fit artist trading cards, which are also known as ATCs. These cards are 2.5 by 3.5 inches, and they're really fun to make and also to trade with friends. I'll show you how I cut mine so I can get 10 out of a single sheet of cardstock. The first cut that I made is 3.5 inches wide, and I'm going to cut that strip into 4 pieces that are 2.5 inches wide. Now the piece of cardstock that's remaining is 5 inches by 11 inches, and I'm going to cut that down the middle to create 2 strips that are 2.5 inches wide, and I'll cut those each into 3.5 inch pieces. That's going to give me a total of 10 cards, and I'm only going to use 7 for my book today, so I'll have a few to tuck away for another project. My ATCs are made of watercolor paper, so I wanted to add a little watery background effect to each one using some watered down distress marker. I've just scribbled that onto my craft sheet and added a little more water to water it down. And then I'll just dab and dip each panel into the wet ink to give each panel a different look. The clear stamp set that I'm using has a lot of different sentiments in it, so I'm going to stamp each panel with a different one, and then I'll stamp each panel with the rose that's in this set as well. I want to stay with shades of that same blue marker that I used earlier, so I'm going to paint with it as well. Here I'm scribbling more ink onto my craft sheet, and I'm going to use a water brush to paint the ink onto the rose. I'm starting with a light wash, just adding a little shadow first, and then I'll go on to the flower. Add a light wash to each petal and the leaf. And then as that layer of color dries, I'll dot more of the ink into those wet areas to create areas that are shaded. As the water on the panel dries, the paint can be more concentrated. When it's wet, the color will spread out more, but as it dries, the color will stay more in place. So you can see that as I dot it in there, it's adding more of a shaded area to the areas of the inside of the flower. I'm not adding a lot of real extreme detail to the image. I just want to create some variation in a loose style so that the flowers have some dimension. With the watercoloring dry, I'm just going to add some silver highlights to each panel. This is acrylic paint that I'm watering down right on my craft sheet, and I'll just sort of scribble and splatter it on with my brush on each panel to give a little different effect to each one. Another little touch that I like to add is a scored line around each edge of the panels. You can do this on the front of the panel or on the back, but I think it gives a nice finished look. The final step then is to adhere the ATCs into your finished book. Here I'm using a book that I made from a print done on my jelly plate. You can use plain or colored cardstock or patterned cardstock for your base, whatever you choose that makes your book special to you. Here's how my project turned out. These make really great little books for inspiration or for journaling, or even little brag books for small photos. I hope that you'll make one to share with us in the gallery. Thank you so much for watching.